Picture this. You're holding on to an idea so incredibly fragile that literally almost nobody believes in it. You are absolutely drowning in borrowed money, you're struggling to just pay your basic bills, and you have a front row seat to watching your young company inch dangerously, terrifyingly close to total collapse. Well, today in this explainer, we're going to trace the extraordinary, anxiety-inducing journey of a guy named Phil Knight. We'll unpack exactly how a young man armed with nothing but an untested academic theory and a cart trunk full of shoes built Nike, arguably the most recognizable sports brand on the planet, from absolute zero.
Section 1. The crazy idea. Before the global empire.
Before the billion-dollar mega deals, before the famous swoosh was everywhere, and way before the superstar athletes, there was just a University of Oregon grad. He had a deep fascination for running and an unproven academic paper. And his whole future really hinged on one incredibly dangerous question. What if high-quality running shoes could be imported directly from Japan to outfit American athletes? Now, Knight didn't just want to leave this as some neat theory on paper. Driven by this single what if, he actually traveled across the world to Japan in the early 1960s. He literally walked right into the offices of Onitsuka, the makers of Tiger running shoes, and boldly pitched them to let him distribute their shoes in the United States. Talk about nerve, right?
So when that very first shipment finally arrived, Knight didn't just put them on a shelf. He immediately sent samples to his former track coach, Bill Bowerman. And Bowerman, well, he wasn't just your average coach. The guy was an absolute obsessive innovator. He was constantly tearing apart shoes, trying to figure out how to make them lighter, how to make his runners faster. It was honestly the perfect collision. Knight's relentless, scrappy hustle meeting Bowerman's intense technical obsession. Together, in the late 1960s, they shook hands and officially formed a company they called Blue Ribbon Sports.
Section 2. Hustling from the trunk. The reality of Blue Ribbon Sports.
Let's just pause and completely shatter this illusion we often have of glamorous overnight success. Because in the beginning, Blue Ribbon Sports had no towering glass headquarters. There was no massive marketing budget, no real infrastructure at all, actually. The reality was incredibly, brutally gritty. The foundation of what would become the Nike empire was just a young entrepreneur literally hawking shoes out of the trunk of his green Plymouth Valiant at local dirt track meets. But here's the thing, Knight understood something profound even back then. He knew he wasn't just selling bits of rubber and leather. He was selling performance.
Section 3. The Big Risk. Surviving the Financial Cycle.
Okay, so Knight's absolute obsession with performance, it actually led to incredible demand. People wanted these shoes, but that explosive growth brought them dangerously close to complete ruin. It's a terrifying, almost paradoxical cycle when you think about it. The company was growing fast, which obviously meant they needed to place larger orders for more shoes. But larger orders demanded a lot more financing, and conservative bankers, they would take one look at this fragile, chaotic little startup and flat out refuse to provide the necessary capital. So you've got eager customers, you've got skyrocketing sales, and yet a simple, terrifying lack of cash meant the entire operation was constantly just days away from collapsing. Knight literally had to fight tooth and nail just to keep the lights on and his dream alive.
Section 4. Building the identity. The birth of Nike. The real tipping point for all of this came when the relationship with their Japanese supplier, Onitsuka, completely fell apart. Just like that, Blue Ribbon Sports found themselves cut off. No shoes. They faced an enormous, terrifying risk. Adapt immediately or die. They realized they had to build their very own brand entirely from scratch. So, in 1971, they chose a new name, Nike. Inspired by the ancient Greek goddess of victory, it was a name destined to symbolize triumph itself. But here's the reality check. A cool name alone doesn't conjure up a global empire. They desperately needed a real identity.
I absolutely love this detail. To give this brand new company a face, they turned to a graphic design student named Carolyn Davidson. And her fee to create the original swoosh logo? A mere $35. $35. At the time, it certainly didn't look like the symbol of a future corporate titan. It was just a humble, inexpensive sketch. But that little design would eventually morph into an absolute cultural icon, becoming one of the single most recognized and valuable logos in all of human history. So they have a name, they have a logo, but they desperately needed a revolutionary product to sell. Enter Bill Bowerman, who was still in his garage, relentlessly experimenting. In what is now a legendary moment of pure mad science, he actually poured liquid urethane directly into his wife's waffle iron. Now, he completely ruined the appliance, obviously, but he successfully invented a revolutionary new shoe sole. It provided this massive traction while remaining incredibly lightweight.
And that destroyed, gooey waffle iron, it perfectly captured Nike's true DNA. Experiment, test, fail, improve, and just keep trying again.
Section 5. More than a shoe. The power of story and identity.
This is where Nike was about to make a massive evolutionary leap. They understood something so profound about human psychology, something that the legacy shoe companies of the time completely missed, and it's this. People don't simply buy products. They buy stories. They buy identity. They are literally buying the feeling of who they want to become. So Nike began aligning themselves with athletes who naturally embodied this raw, rebellious spirit, most notably, a legendary, fiercely competitive runner named Steve Prefontaine. Pre didn't just wear the shoes. He became a living, breathing symbol of Nike's unapologetic drive for absolute greatness.
From there, Nike's ambitions completely outgrew the running track. They decided to expand from being just a niche running company into the massive, high-stakes arena of basketball. In the 1980s, they made an unprecedented all-in bet on a rookie named Michael Jordan, and wow, did it pay off. The Air Jordan partnership proved that a shoe could completely transcend sports. Jordan wasn't just a walking billboard for the company. His unbelievable swagger and sheer dominance became permanently fused with the brand's DNA. Nike effectively transformed athletic footwear into high fashion, lifestyle, and a global symbol of cultural status.
Section 6. The courage to begin. Decades of risk and rejection. Getting to that incredible point of global dominance, it wasn't a straight line. It was a relentless gauntlet of pressure, fierce competition, and desperate reinvention. Phil Knight's journey proves that successful entrepreneurship isn't about taking these blind, reckless leaps into the unknown like people think. It's actually the scientific method applied to business. You begin with a hypothesis, you test it out in the real world, you learn from the brutally honest feedback, you adapt, and you stubbornly refuse to quit. Great companies survive not because they somehow avoid problems, but because they master the art of responding to them. And this scientific persistence, it translates directly into Nike's ultimate competitive advantage. You see, powerful brands don't just communicate what they sell, they communicate what they fundamentally believe. While traditional, boring competitors were running ads simply saying, hey, buy these shoes, Nike's underlying message was always, believe you can achieve more. They turn their athletes into these towering monuments of human possibility. Selling that deep emotional connection, selling pure potential rather than just pieces of rubber and foam, is exactly what separated them from the pack forever.
The thing to remember is that Phil Knight wasn't the loudest, most charismatic entrepreneur in the room. He was just intensely focused. He accepted that building an empire requires a massive tolerance for uncertainty and years of really uncomfortable decisions. The honest truth is, the beginning of a great company rarely looks great. There is absolutely no perfect moment to start, and there are never ever any guarantees. So if you ever find yourself waiting for the perfect conditions to launch your idea, I want you to picture Phil Knight. Picture him standing alone by his car trunk at a dusty track meet, just hoping someone would buy a single pair of shoes. He didn't know where the road would lead. He just had the courage to take the first step. So what is the first step you are going to take today?